3 empty desks sit in a Spanish classroom, and they'll never be filled again. On Friday the 13th of November 1992, 3 teenage girls left their homes in the quiet town of Alcasser, excited for a Friday night that promised music, dancing, and freedom. They never came home. What followed next wasn't just a murder investigation. It became a national obsession that exposed the darkest corners of Spain's media, its justice system, and perhaps its elite. This is the story of Miriam García, Antonia Gómez, and Desirée Hernández, 3 best friends whose disappearance would haunt an entire nation for decades. A case so disturbing, so poorly handled, and so shrouded in conspiracy that 30 years later, Spain can't still agree on what really happened. This is the Alcàsser Murders, the case that has all the answers about who, what, and when. But the DNA evidence suggests they caught the wrong men. If you're into deep dive true crime that respects the victims while exposing uncomfortable truths, the Slice of Crime is the right place for you. I'm here every week with cases that go beyond headlines, the ones that changed entire nations. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the Alcasser story gets darker than you can imagine, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, to understand how 3 girls could vanish on a Friday night and tear a country apart, we need to go back to that November evening in 1992, when everything was still normal and 3 best friends were just excited about dancing the night away. Alcasser, 1992. A small village just outside Valencia where everyone knows everyone, and the biggest excitement is the weekend disco in the neighboring town. Antonia Gómez Rodriguez, known to everyone as Toñi, was 15 years old. Born in Valencia on May 25, 1977, she was the shy one of the group, nervous but caring, with a compassion that drew people to her. By 1992, Toñi had finished school and was looking for work, dreaming of a future that stretched out before her. Desirée Hernández Walsh was 14, born in 1978. Athletic and competitive, she excelled at any sport she tried. Friends remember her as strong-willed, fun, loving, but stubborn when she believed in something. Desirée had a personality that commanded attention. And then there was Miriam García Iborra, also 14, born in 1978. With her light brown hair and striking blue eyes, Miriam had gained a reputation for her beautiful looks. Boys in her class noticed her, but those who knew her best remembered her kindness more than her appearance. These 3 girls, born in Valencia and raised in the little village of Alcasser, had become inseparable friends, and on this particular Friday the 13th, they had plans. That afternoon, Desirée and Miriam had been in school all day. Toñi spent the afternoon with another classmate, Esther. Eventually, all the friends gathered at Esther's house. Esther was sick with the flu, but the other 3 were planning something exciting. A party at Cooler, a popular nightclub in Picassent, a nearby town. According to family members, the girls didn't have any money to spend at the club. They hadn't pre-purchased tickets to attend the party. But teenage determination finds a way. At 8 p.m. that evening, they left Esther's house with big smiles and bigger plans. Normal, safe, innocent. Many eyewitnesses will later remember seeing them on their way. 3 girls, walking together, laughing in the autumn evening. None of their families were worried. This was Alcasser, a place where nothing bad ever happened. But as the sun set over the Valencia countryside that evening, those 3 girls were walking towards a nightmare that would change Spain forever. What happened next will be pieced together from multiple eyewitness accounts. Some reliable, some contradictory, all haunting. Around 8 p.m., Francisco Soria, a friend of the girls, saw them near Esther's home. During a short conversation, he asked if they were going to the party at Culo that evening. According to his testimony, they said they weren't, but they were lying. Around 8:15 p.m., another acquaintance, a boy who was friendly but not close friends with the girls, saw them sitting on the pavement a few streets away. They appeared to be hitchhiking. He offered to take them anywhere they wanted to go. The girls told him they were going to Kulo. He testified that he dropped them off at an auto repair shop near the club. They thanked him and got out of the car. That should have been the end of the story. Drop off near the club, walk inside, dance the night away. But then came the most disturbing eyewitness testimony of all. Maria Badal Syria didn't know the girls. She came forward just days after they were reported missing. From her penthouse window around 8 p.m., Syria noticed 3 teenage girls walking past. She watched them get into a tiny white car. Even though they were just minutes from their destination, they got into that car. Syria remembered something else. She saw at least 3 or 4 men already inside the white car. According to her testimony, when the girls climbed in, 7 people were crammed into that vehicle. The car vanished down the street. Nobody would ever see the girls alive again. When the girls failed to come home that evening, their parents became concerned. These parents, who knew each other through their daughters' friendships, met up the following day. Their daughters had never stayed out all night without calling. Something was wrong. That evening at 9:30 p.m. on November 14th, more than 24 hours after the girls disappeared, their parents went to the local Guardia Civil unit in Picassent and reported the girls missing. But formal searches didn't begin until days later. By Monday morning, November 16th, 3 full days after the girls vanished, they still hadn't come home. And Spain was about to realize something terrible had just happened. The question everyone was asking, if they weren't at the nightclub, then where the hell were they? The answer would take 75 days to find. And when it came, it would be worse than anyone imagined. So far, 3 girls vanished on Friday the 13th. Multiple people saw them that night. They got into a white car with several men inside. And now, Spain is searching everywhere. For 75 days, Spain became obsessed with 3 missing girls from a town most had never heard of. From the outset, it was assumed the girls had been kidnapped. The investigation exploded into the largest search operation in Spanish history. Authorities interrogated friends and family, hoping for clues. Thousands of volunteers scoured the Valencia countryside. Police helicopters flew grid patterns over fields and forests. Divers searched reservoirs. Dogs tracked scents that led nowhere. A specialized task force was quickly formed, a collaboration between the Guardia Civil and the National Police, known as the Unit of Central Operations, headquartered in Valencia. The search stretched into adjacent countries, even continents. The case was reported to Interpol, expanding the investigation to surrounding European and African nations. Every day, the families appeared on television, pleading for information, their faces growing more haggard, their hope more desperate. And then the suckers arrived. Psychics called TV stations, claiming they could see where the girls were being held. Self-proclaimed mediums appeared on talk shows, describing visions and dreams. One claimed the girls were alive in Portugal. Another insisted they were in Morocco. The media broadcast every wild theory, every false lead, turning tragedy into entertainment while ratings soared. Tips flooded in, thousands of them. Each one investigated, each one leading nowhere. Christmas came and went. The families set extra places at their dinner tables, unable to accept what they feared in their hearts. New Year's 1993 arrived, and still, nothing. Then, on January 27th, 1993, 75 days after the girls disappeared, 2 amateur beekeepers made a discovery that would horrify Spain. Gabriel Gonzalez and José Sala were on their way to check the hives on Sala's property in the little village of La Romana, on 50 kilometers from Picassent, about 70 kilometers from Alcasser. The hives were situated near the remains of an old abandoned house. They decided to let the sun warm up before approaching the hives. Gonzalez wandered around for 20 minutes, eventually entering the abandoned structure. That's when something shiny caught his attention. Yelling to Salah to come and look, the two discovered a loose collection of branches and plants that had been haphazardly thrown over a ditch. Salah peeled back the twigs to examine what was hidden below. He discovered a large watch sticking out from the ground. Then he realized the watch was attached to a person. What Salah and Gonzalez unearthed that day in La Romana would shock Spain to the core. The girls of Alcasser had been found. 3 bodies. Shallow grave. 2 had been decapitated. Hands bound with black rope. Tortured. Murdered. But what came next, the investigation itself, will become almost as controversial as the crime. From the moment the bodies were discovered, the handling of the crime scene was marred by catastrophic police incompetence. It took local magistrates several hours to make it to the crime scene. The body excavation occurred without the supervision of the specialized Ricart task force that had been leading the investigation. The crime scene was only locked down several hours after the discovery, allowing the integrity of the scene to be completely compromised. The excavation was done almost immediately. Nobody at the crime scene took photos of the area before digging. No exhausting search was completed before pulling the bodies out of the pit. This will derail the investigation forever. When the bodies were pulled out, police discovered they'd been wrapped in a large rug. 2 of the girls had been decapitated. Their hands were bound by black rope. Along with the bodies, several items were discovered inside the pit. Unrelated pieces of clothing, bits of rope, and pieces of paper. Police took photos of these individual items after pulling them out of the pit, just like they did with the bodies. These items were sorted afterwards and photographed together. Some pieces were just left behind at the scene. In any competent forensic investigation, this will be unthinkable. But amid the chaos and contamination, investigators did find something crucial. Several pieces of paper near the ditch. When they put these bits together, they found it was a card from a local hospital, the University Hospital of La Fe, situated a few hours northeast of Valencia. It was an outpatient leaflet from a year prior. The card belonged to Enrique Anglés, who lived in Valencia and had been treated from some sort of sexual illness in 1992. But authorities' attention quickly turned from Enrique to his brother, Antonio Anglés, and his friend, Miguel Ricart, both habitual criminals, both about to become Spain's most wanted men. But here's where the story gets even stranger. If you're still here, it means you're uncovering this together. The Alcasser case is full of unanswered questions, and your engagement helps keep these stories alive. Hit that like button so more people can learn what really happened to Miriam, Toñi, and Desirée. Then, on January 28th, just one day after the bodies were discovered, Miguel suddenly admitted to some participation in the crimes. And his confession would change everything. While police were there to serve a search warrant, Miguel Ricart arrived with 2 of Antonio's brothers. They were all promptly detained and taken to the Guardia Civil barracks for interrogation. During questioning, Miguel informed the authorities that he drove a white Opel Corsa, which vaguely matched the description of the vehicle the girls were seen getting into. From this point on, authorities focused on him as the major suspect. Miguel denied seeing Antonia in the months leading up to the interview. He claimed the 2 men had been friends for almost a decade, but he had no idea where Antonia was and hadn't seen him in some time. He did concede that Antonia was an aggressive man who may have had mental disorders that made him a threat to others. But police used contradictions in Miguel's voluntary statements to start piecing together his participation. When questioned where he'd been on November 13th, Miguel repeatedly said he'd been in prison. Police knew he'd spent most of December in jail for car theft, but there was no record of him being in prison on the Friday the girls went missing. After strenuous questioning, Miguel was read his rights and formally charged as an accomplice to the murders of Miriam García Iborra, Desirée Hernández Folch, and Antonia Gómez Rodriguez. But here's the problem. Authorities had little to no evidence to link their suspect to the murders. He happened to own a vehicle similar to the ones the girls had gotten into, and a paper with the name of someone he knew was discovered at the crime scene. That was it. If you're still here, it means we are uncovering this together. The Alcasser case was full of unanswered questions, and the engagement helps keep these stories alive. Hit that like button so more people can learn what happened to Miriam, Toñi, and Desirée. Then, on January 28th, just one day after the bodies were discovered, Miguel suddenly admitted to some participation in the crimes. And his confession would change everything. Miguel provided detectives with a general chronology of how he and Antonio Anglés allegedly kidnapped the girls. According to Miguel's confession, he and Antonio picked up the three girls, and the girls willingly went along with them. When they arrived in La Romana, Miguel claimed he had consensual sex with Desirée, while Antonio walked into the night with Miriam and Toñi. Miguel stated that around 20 minutes had gone by before he heard 3 gunshots in the distance. That was his version. Consensual. Separate. He was just there. Miguel's confession constantly changed during his interrogations, which he subsequently alleged were forced via torture and abuse by the Spanish Guardia Civil. His confession linked Antonio to the murders of all 3 girls, but the police had no clue where Antonio was. Police subsequently learned that they nearly apprehended him on January 27th, the same day the bodies were discovered. Antonio was at the family home when they arrested his brother Enrique and Miguel. Investigators theorized that Antonio, who they assumed was living in a bedroom on the 4th story of the building, jumped out the window when the Guardia Civil came to interview his family. In the following weeks, authorities got calls placing Antonio in different locations across the neighborhood. By February 5th, almost a week after Miguel's arrest and confession, authorities admitted they lost track of Antonio Anglés. The hunt for Antonio expanded to neighboring countries, placing him on Interpol's radar. Antonio's last confirmed sighting in Spain was at Mingaquena, after which he traveled to Lisbon. He allegedly stowed away aboard the container ship Cita de Sassari, bound for Ireland. The official theory: Antonio went overboard off the coast of Ireland and died from hypothermia or drowning. But alternative theories suggest Anglés eluded arrest and is now traveling under his Brazilian passport. No body has ever been found. No definitive proof of death. No confirmed sightings. One of Europe's most wanted men simply vanished. Miguel's statements changed so many times before his trial began in May 1997. And what his defense team revealed would add another layer to an already impossible case. On September 22, 1997, nearly 5 years after the murders, Miguel Ricart stood trial in Valencia. The courtroom was packed. The victims' families sat in the front row, their faces carved with grief and rage. Outside, hundreds of protesters demanded justice. Miguel's defense team made a stunning claim. There was no physical evidence tying him and Antonio to the murders. And technically, They were right. During an autopsy performed after the girls were found, the forensic team found 15 individual hairs on the girls' bodies. Almost all of them were pubic hairs, indicating sexual assault by multiple perpetrators. 12 of those hairs were tested. The DNA evidence proved that they did not come from Miguel or Antonia. Instead, the DNA sequences belonged to several different people, possibly between 5 and 7 men. The remaining 3 hairs were too damaged and could not be analyzed. So, the defense was right. There was no DNA evidence linking Miguel or Antonia to the crimes. Yet Miguel Ricart was sentenced to 70 years in jail on Friday, September 5th, 1997, for kidnapping, raping, and murdering the 3 young girls. The conviction was based almost entirely on his own confessions. Confessions he claimed were tortured out of him. Antonio Anglés was and continues to be regarded as the primary perpetrator of the crime, despite the fact he had not been seen by Spanish officials since early 1993. But then, the questions began, and not everyone believed the official version. Miriam's father, Fernando Garcia, publicly questioned the official account of events, calling Antonio and Miguel just pawns. He claimed his own research revealed proof that the girls had been murdered and tortured by men of high social position. One of the most persistent theories was that the girls had been taken and videotaped for a snuff film distributed to wealthy clients. There is no evidence to back up these claims. But here's what is undeniable. The DNA evidence proved that a group of men, possibly 5 to 7, sexually assaulted and killed the girls. So, why has Miguel never mentioned anyone else as an accomplice? Could Fernando Garcia be onto something? Were powerful men involved in the murders? Two things seem clear. There were most likely multiple perpetrators, and Antonio Anglés had something to hide. He is definitely the key to solving the whole crime. But as the conspiracy theories swirled, and Antonio remained a ghost, the wounds the media had opened only festered deeper. By now, the girls are dead, DNA suggests multiple killers, one suspect is convicted on an alleged coerced confession, another has vanished, and Spain is beginning to realize the official story doesn't add up. If the murders of Miriam, Toñi, and Desirée represented Spain's darkest criminal nightmare, what the media did next represented a moral failure of equal magnitude. Spanish TV in the 1990s was a wild west of sensationalism, but the Alcasser case took it to unprecedented lows. Talk shows invited the victims' families on air, only to ambush them with psychics who claimed to channel their dead daughters. Graphic details of the torture were read aloud during prime time. Crime scene photographs were leaked and broadcast. The suffering of grieving parents became entertainment, their trauma monetized for ratings. But the lowest point came in 1994, with a program that would change Spanish broadcasting forever. A major network aired a TV special that reconstructed the girls' final hours in explicit graphic detail, showing actresses portraying Miriam, Toñi, and Desirée being tortured and murdered. The program aired at 10 p.m. Millions watched. The victims' families, given no warning, discovered the broadcast when neighbors called them, horrified. The public outcry was immediate and fierce. How could this be allowed? How could television networks profit from recreating the rape and murders of teenage girls? The victims' families sued. Protests erupted outside network headquarters, and politicians were forced to act. The Alcasser case became the catalyst for sweeping changes in Spanish media law, specifically the 1995 Audiovisual Law Amendments. New regulations were implemented, protecting crime victims and their families from media harassment. Restrictions were placed on what could be broadcast about ongoing investigation. It was progress born from exploitation, reform built on the graves of 3 girls who couldn't defend themselves. But the damage was done. The families of Alcasser had been victimized twice, once by the killers, and again by the very media that claimed to seek justice for their daughters. The cameras eventually turned off, but the damage didn't. In Alcasser today, there stands a small memorial where the girls were thrown. 3 white stones bearing their names. Locals still place flowers there, even 30 years later. On the anniversary of their disappearance, every November 13th, candles are lit and vigils are held. The entire town pauses to remember. Miriam's mother passes the memorial every time she leaves her house, unable to move away from where her daughter's memory is kept alive. Every single day, she walks past the spot where Miriam's life ended and her nightmare began. Toñi's family still campaigns for answers, still demands a reinvestigation, still refuses to accept that 2 men acting alone could have left DNA from 5 to 7 perpetrators. Desiree's relatives continue to demand that the search for Anglés never stop, that Interpol never close its file, that someone, somewhere, finally tells the truth. These weren't just statistics in a true crime documentary. They weren't just headlines or cold case files. They were real girls with real dreams. Toñi, who wanted to find work and build a life, who was shy but caring, and who would have made someone an amazing friend, partner, mother. Desirée, the athlete with a strong personality, who was fun-loving and stubborn, and would have fought for what she believed in. Miriam, with her beautiful light brown hair and blue eyes, who wanted to become a teacher, who would have shaped young minds and changed lives. They deserve to grow old, fall in love, have careers, raise families, and live the lives that were stolen from them on a dark November road. The tragedy of Alcasser isn't just what happened to 3 innocent girls, it's everything that happened after. The catastrophically bungled crime scene investigation that may have left the real killers escape justice. The media circus that traumatized grieving families and turned murder into entertainment. Questionable confession extracted through alleged torture. The DNA evidence that points to multiple perpetrators who are never investigated. The conviction of a man with more physical evidence linking him to the crime. The disappearance of the primary suspect, who remains one of Europe's most wanted fugitives. The conspiracy theories that won't die because too many questions remain unanswered. The feeling that justice was incomplete, that the truth remains hidden, that powerful people got away with something unspeakable. Pain will never fully heal from Alcasser because it represents something larger than 3 murders. It represents the moment a nation realized its institutions could fail catastrophically, its media could exploit the vulnerable for profit, its justice system could convict the wrong people, and its police could let the real killers walk free. It represents the possibility, the terrifying possibility, that we may never know who really killed Miriam, Toñi, and Desirée. Will we ever know the complete truth about what happened that night? Will Antonia Anglés ever be found, dead or alive? And were there other involved, powerful others, who ensured their names never entered the investigation? If you are watching from Spain, these names need no introduction. You grew up with this case, with the fear it created, with the questions it left behind. If you are watching from elsewhere, remember them. Miriam García, Antonia Gómez, Desirée Hernández. 3 friends who deserved better from the monsters who killed them, from the police who bungled the investigation, from the media that exploited them, and from the justice system that may have convicted the wrong men entirely. If this case resonates with you, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe Miguel Ricart was involved, or was he a scapegoat? Do you think Antonia Anglés is alive, or did he die escaping Spain? And most importantly, do you believe powerful men were involved and protected? Share what you think. Sometimes truth comes not from official channels, but from people refusing to forget, refusing to accept easy answers, refusing to let the powerful bury their crimes. If this story like this matters to you, stories told with respect, depth, and a commitment to truth over comfortable lies, then subscribe. Every week, we explore cases that changed nations, expose systems, and remind us why justice matters, and we can never stop demanding it. Their memories deserve to be kept alive. Their story deserves to be told honestly, completely, and without fear of powerful people who might prefer it stays buried. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people demand answers, Spain will finally reopen this case and find out who of those 5 to 7 men really were. May their names never fade from Spain's memory, and may the truth, whatever it is, finally come to light.